Hey everybody, Nate here. I know I'm usually really excited and ready to have a laugh with you guys and happy to make these videos, but today's video is going to be a little bit different because as of February 24th, 2022, Russia officially invaded Ukraine. There is a lot of scary stuff going on in the world right now, and obviously in this video we're going to talk a lot about how this whole situation is going to affect markets and economies throughout the world. The first thing I want to make super clear in this video that this situation is beyond concerning and scary. And frankly, I will never understand exactly what the people of Ukraine are feeling right now, and my thoughts and prayers go out to them at this time. With that being said, with this entire Russia-Ukraine situation happening, there is going to be a lot of money lost. As we've already seen, the Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ have tanked at their fastest rate since all the way back in March of 2020. And we all remember what happened back in March of 2020. But in most cases, money is going to come and go. There's always going to be time for us to make more money. However, with this conflict and potential war brewing in Europe right now, some people are not going to have that chance because there's probably going to be some lives that are lost. And frankly, you just can't put a price on that. And while we can always get more money, you can't bring those lives that are potentially going to be lost back. And you certainly can't fix a lot of the trauma that's going to be caused by this Russia-Ukraine invasion. And after looking through a lot of images of Russian tanks rolling through Ukraine and the sounds of bombs dropping on the country's capital, I have to constantly remind myself that we are not in the 80s and in the 1940s anymore. These are images that are coming out in 2022. These things are still happening, and it's an absolute tragedy, which is why we all need to be a little bit nicer, watchful, and always prepared for what could happen in this crazy world. But with all that being said, this Russia-Ukraine situation has the potential to completely flip economies all throughout the world. And the situation only seems to be getting worse, as China has actually spoken out on the issue and appears to be backing Russia at this time. That could have massive implications for our global economy as we know it. And countries around the world are starting to roll out sanctions on Russia. So today we're going to talk about what this new Russia invasion of Ukraine means for markets and economies all throughout the world. We're also going to talk about what could potentially be coming next in terms of the future of our global economy. But before I break all of this down, do me a quick favor and hit smash or destroy that thumbs up button below and hit that notification bell too. Both of those two things are completely free and they help to show me that you like this video and that you want to see even more just like it. Thank you so much for doing that, and now let's talk all about what is happening in the world right now. So number one, Russia has officially invaded Ukraine. Now we've been talking about this for the past couple of months because it has massive implications on markets and economies all throughout the world. The first thing we're going to start seeing right now is the price of a ton of different Russian exports going way up for all countries throughout the world. We're talking the wheat industry, oil, natural gas, aluminum, and corn here. All of those massive industries are going to start seeing some huge price hikes. And that is just from the Russia side, because Russia is not going to be playing nice with the countries that are putting sanctions on them, particularly the United States and the United Kingdom. But that is not the only thing that we need to worry about here, because Ukraine has a ton of resources that it exports to other countries as well. It is an industrial giant just like a ton of other countries. Ukraine is the #1 producer in the world for sunflower seeds and sunflower oil, so that industry is also going to see a price hike. It's second in barley production, and it's also the 4th largest producer in the world of potatoes. Not only that, but it produces a ton of wheat too. So all of those industries are going to be heavily inflated until this conflict is resolved. And it's not that Ukraine doesn't want to get those exports out, it's that it can't, because it's fighting a war right now and defending itself against Russia. For us over here in the United States and for a ton of other countries, that means inflation is going to start going through the roof even more than it already has. In January 2022 alone, inflation was around 7.5%. That's the highest we've seen in over 40 years, and now a ton of different experts are saying that with this Russia invasion of Ukraine, inflation could suddenly hit 10%. That would be another big jump in inflation, and with everything the Federal Reserve and our United States federal government is doing to tackle it, there's not much they can do here. It's most likely going to continue to go up because of this invasion. And ultimately, that means the price for everyday goods and services is going to go up even more, which means Americans' budgets are going to get strained and they're not going to be able to afford all of the things that they used to. That's going to hurt a ton of our markets in the country because now businesses are going to have an even harder time finding people because wages haven't kept up with inflation for a long time now. They now have to raise their wages for new employees and current employees. That way they can start finding more people to fill positions and hopefully put less strain on our supply chains. On the flip side, that is terrible for markets because now with Americans buying less things, earnings reports on Wall Street are going to start dipping, which means businesses aren't making as much money. So how can they possibly pay people more if they're not making as much money? In addition, there's nothing they can do about the supply chain problem. So they're not making enough money to meet demand in our country. People are buying a lot less things. This is bad news for our economy all the way around. So that's the first thing you need to know. The second thing you need to know here is all about the relationship between the United States, Russia, and China, because China actually made a statement on this Russian attack of Ukraine earlier today. And they essentially blamed the United States for Russia invading Ukraine. China's assistant foreign minister actually said, quote, "The US has been fueling the flame, fanning up the flame. How do they want to put out the fire?" And it's important to mention here that they didn't directly support Russia's actions in invading Ukraine. In fact, the assistant Chinese minister said, quote, "China is closely following the development of the situation. We hope all parties can go back to dialogue and negotiation, and that what you are seeing today is not what they wish to see for either country." Now, with all that being said, it's clear that China has not directly sided with Russia on this issue. However, they are starting to do some things behind the scenes that might imply China is on Russia's side here. For instance, right before the Olympics, which are happening in China this year, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping met in a private meeting regarding the further enlargement of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And China's president said there were no limits or forbidden areas of cooperation between Russia and China at this time. The United States obviously has a strained relationship with Russia already, so this whole situation is only making things worse. The bigger issue, though, is China is one of the largest producers and suppliers of United States goods in the world. Not only that, but the entire rest of the world for that matter. If China were to go even further and back Russia and Putin's invasion and start putting more sanctions on the United States and the rest of the world, well, that could mean our economy takes a massive blow, and it means that inflation is going to continue to go up even faster. And when I say even faster, we're talking about the threat of hyperinflation in the United States, and also inflation higher than we've ever seen, higher in the late 1970s and early 1980s when inflation was around 14%. But this gets even worse when you really start to look at that word enlargement of the North Atlantic Organization Treaty. You see, Russia has been eyeing Ukraine for a long time now. They've always thought that Ukraine should be a part of Russia. However, China has an extremely similar situation going on in Taiwan. They don't recognize Taiwan as a country, and they've talked about unifying Taiwan and China for a very long time now. And now experts and investors are worried that China could ultimately invade Taiwan and pretty much do the exact same thing that Russia is doing to the Ukraine right now. This would mean further deterioration of our worldwide economy, and it would be bad news for our tech industry and auto industry in the United States. Taiwan produces around 92% of the world's microchips, and if you remember, in 2021 and 2020, the entire world faced a huge microchip chip shortage. And a lot of that is because of supply and demand. There was a lot of things going on in the United States that created demand for technology and cars. People wanted all of those things, and all of those things require microchips in order to function. Those microchips are basically the brains of a lot of our technology. Taiwan produces most of those microchips, and if China was to invade Taiwan, well, that would mean the supply of microchips becomes even more scarce. We've seen the price of a new vehicle go up year over year around 12% from the beginning of 2021 till right now. That price could essentially explode if now auto manufacturers can't make new vehicles because they have no microchips, which means you can expect technology to continue to jump up in price in 2022. Now, this is bad for markets in general because a lot of the IPOs that launched on Wall Street in 2021 were tech focused. They were tech startups. Those businesses are already super strapped for cash because they're just starting up. And it's been a rough time for IPOs over the last 6 months or so. Most of these tech IPOs are not making any money. And with it harder for them to actually produce the goods that they need and harder for consumers to actually buy them, well, you could see a ton of these tech companies essentially go out of business over the next year. That's putting another level of strain on the New York Stock Exchange because it appears right now that no industry is safe. And of course, this is all on top of possible Federal Reserve rate hikes in March of 2022 and the complete pulling of a lot of their asset purchasing and bond buying on the New York Stock Exchange. They've been purchasing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of assets from the stock market every single month for almost 2 years now. They want that program to completely be over with by March of this year, and they want to start raising rates. All of that is an effort to tackle and lower inflation in our economy. Their hands are pretty much tied. They've already printed so much money. They've already pumped so much money into the stock market and our economy that now they have no choice but to get aggressive on inflation, or else we are absolutely going to see hyperinflation. Again, we haven't yet seen hyperinflation, but it's a real possibility if the Fed does nothing. So they have no choice here but to raise interest rates, and they're probably going to do that by around 50 basis points multiple times in 2022. That's going to hurt markets because now demand is going to start coming down even further for regular everyday Americans. And spending is what keeps our economy going. If Americans can't spend any money because they can't afford anything, well, businesses aren't going to get any money to grow or pay their workers. So we could see a total economic collapse in 2022. And finally, number 3, the United States, United Kingdom, and pretty much every nation of NATO and the United Nations is putting sanctions on Russia right now. Now, these sanctions are mainly focused on Russian businesses, corporations, and banks. They're basically hitting the wealthy portion of the country right now. And the idea here is that hitting the country directly in its wallet will hopefully make the population of Russia beg its country's leaders to pull out of Ukraine because everybody is starting to suffer. Now, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen because it really just depends on how long this whole situation goes on for and how much money is behind all of these banks and financial institutions in Russia. But we do know that Russian markets are tanking right now. And of course, this is a big risk to the United States because they have no idea how long things are going to go on for, and they don't know the future impact that all of this is going to have on our economy. Now, with all of that being said, here is what you need to know. There is a lot of moving parts right here. This entire situation is way more complicated than I'm making it out to be, and the geopolitical situation is even more intense. But the United States right now is sending some troops over into the Ukraine region, not directly into Ukraine, as the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has said that we are not at this time entering a war with Russia. However, the troops are going into the neighboring countries of Ukraine in order to bolster their defenses because while Russia has said it only wants Ukraine at this time, we don't for sure know that. Russia could potentially start invading even more parts of Europe. And if that happens, well, the entire economy and markets around the world are going to be in free fall. But it also means that a ton of money from the United States is going to start pouring into a lot of these countries, and more troops are going to be sent into Europe. What you need to know, though, is that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Prices are going to continue to go up for a long time, so you need to prepare your finances finances. Now more than ever, it is super important for your money to work for you. You can't just put it in a savings account. You can't just hold on to it and spend every single dollar that you have. If you do that and the rest of the country does that, well, we're potentially going to run into a recession. It's a time for some serious money management until things start to level out in our world economy and our local one. Not only that, but keep an eye on some particular stocks in general right now. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies and corporations around the world, war is good for business. So you might start to see some defense stocks going way up in the United States and across the world, particularly the stocks of Lockheed Martin and GD. Both of those are aerospace and defense companies that work directly with the United States military. As for the future of our world economy, there is a potential that there is going to be a pretty big war in Europe right now. And the United States isn't going to be able to ignore that forever. We could see some pretty big lockdowns and sanctions from world giants in 2022 and beyond, which is going to mean restrictive economies in just about every country you can think of. And most experts agree that that's going to have short-term effects on our markets, but long-lasting effects on inflation, which means the price of everything is probably going to continue to rise for a long time. And finally, I gotta just remind you, and of course myself here, that if you're watching this in the United States, we are extremely fortunate at this time. I'm lucky enough to just talk about this situation. I don't have to worry about bombs getting dropped on my head while I'm fighting opposing governments. And that makes us extremely lucky that we even get a chance to do this. Of course, I'm not happy to talk about any of this, but it's important to keep you guys informed and for us to know all of the facts so we can make really good decisions about our money and family. Nobody ever wants to see this happen. This is a terrible, terrible thing. And I hope that a diplomatic solution can be found super soon so that way this invasion can end and we can go back to making normal videos on this channel. But until that happens, I will keep you updated on everything that goes down with this Russia-Ukraine situation, our world economy, and of course, our local economy. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about Russia invading the Ukraine? How do you think this is going to affect our world economy in the short term and long term? And is this all going to lead to a potential massive war? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country and now around the world, our team puts together a free daily newsletter and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else that's going on in the business and financial world, I'm putting out videos 7 days a week on this channel, and I've actually got another update ready for you right here, so be sure to click on that before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Stay safe out there, be kind, and I'll see you all in the next one.